ask you about the testing of All in the Family. When the networks were saying that the audience doesn't think it's funny and you couldn't believe it. So we talk a lot about data and analyzing data, but it turns out the data in that case was wrong because people were just embarrassed to be saying that they thought something was funny. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience?
Well, not something was funny, but something in Archie's language was funny.
Okay.
So, imagine yourself sitting behind a glass wall, on the other side of which is a focus group.
Hmm.
They're being shown an episode of All in the Family, and there's a big dial on the wall. And they have at their seats, they have a little wheel. They turn it to the right, and it registers negative. They turn it to the left, and it registers positive. Meaning they hate it, they like it. They hate it, they like it.
Right.
And now it's a glass wall, so you see these 50 people very clearly. Their backs are to you because they're looking at the screen in front of them. But you see them, and you also get to hear them. You see them coming out of their chairs and going forward the way an audience does when they're laughing partly from the belly.
Sure.
When they're getting belly laughs, they're out of their seats and moving forward and coming back. You watch this wave of laughter, and the dial is going negative. They are roaring with laughter, but they don't want to be seen laughing at some of the things Archie is saying. So it's mind and matter.
Do
And
people?
you've got to go, if you're producing this show, with the thing you're looking for is, are they laughing?
Sure. It seems to me that leaders nowadays rely too much on data versus their gut feeling. Do you feel like when you were producing your shows and your movies that you were more relying on your gut feeling versus what other people were thinking?
Well, I always relied on my gut feeling, and the network couldn't do that because they were always people reporting to other people who were reporting to other people, and they were the ones who were deciding this is good for the American audience and this isn't. And I had a lot more faith in the American audience than that. Somebody, one great wit once said, nobody ever lost money underestimating the intelligence of the American people. It's a very famous line.
Sure.
I never bought that. The establishment, unfortunately, in many places in the establishment, bought that.
Were they just a pain in the butt to work with?
Who?
The network executives who are trying to censor, say, All in the Family?
They were very difficult, but you knew always that somebody was speaking for somebody else who was speaking for somebody else. It was rare that you got to the top guy. And a lot of them were very reasonable, but they were just in jobs and they were doing what they thought they had to do.
I see. I have to ask you, just because my grandmother would be mad at me if I didn't ask, can you tell me the Frank Sinatra story about how you recruited him for your movie, Come Blow Your Horn?
Oh, I'd written a script. It was a play of Neil Simon's. It was his very first play that originally been called One Shoe Off. Um, and and it was also called, or no, we were calling the screenplay Cockadoodle-Doo.
Mm-hmm.
Sinatra was playing an older brother whose younger brother was coming to live with him, and it was very naive. So Sinatra was going to introduce him into manhood and ladies and life in New York. Kid being off a farm, and I couldn't get him to read the script, and I couldn't get him to read the script. His producer was a great friend of mine. I gave it to him. He tried and tried and tried. So when the script was called Cockadoodle-Doo, I delivered a dozen hens to his he drove out one morning. There were a lot of cockadoodle hens cockadoodling. Uh, we sent some trumpets to the front lawn. We did some crazy things. I followed him around town. I caught him coming out of restaurants. I saw him one day rehearsing with Judy Garland. I don't know how I got into that studio, but I did. Across a whole floor, he yelled. My hair was hardly any hair. It was cut very short. It was dark. I looked. He called me the helmet. It's like I was wearing a helmet. Get that helmet out of here.
But he was having fun with this, right?
But it became fun. Yeah, he appreciated I was trying so hard, and he maybe that helped him not read it so that I would do more. We finally gave him a corner, a reading corner, a big truck. We put down a rug, a reading, a chaise lounge, and an ottoman, a lamp. Jackie Gleason had an album out called Music to Read By, Jackie Gleason's Music to Read By. We had the lamp, a stand with a smoking jacket. The corner of a room that was just for a reader, a male reader. And we had it set out on the lawn with an exceedingly long electric wire so the light was on, so that when he came home in the dark, there would be the corner of the room on the grass in front of his home. The guys that set it out there working for the studio said it was perfect. But unfortunately, what happened was that some of the people who worked for Sinatra came before he did, and they put everything away. They folded up the rug and put it in the garage. They did all Sinatra found was a smoking jacket that he imagined somebody gave him and he'd forgotten because he knew he didn't buy it. 2 days later, I called his agent and I said, "I've done everything I can. I can't do anymore." And the agent, who knew what I was doing about the reading kit, said, "You mean he didn't react to that? Something's wrong. Sinatra will laugh like crazy at that." And Sinatra called me back and said, "That's how I learned everything had been put away. And all Frank found was a smoking jacket." But he loved the idea. He finally read the script.
That's an amazing story. So let me ask you about the future. I understand you have a story idea for a new TV show, but you're having a hard time pitching that. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, that's something I started a few years ago when I thought that Betty White, whom I love, I think she's fabulous, but she alone does not make an entire demographic. And I wanted to do something about older folk. And I called it Guess Who Died?
That didn't go over, right?
It didn't go over. The script is still getting attention. Something could happen with it. But I am considering working with a studio that wants to do a Latina version of One Day at a Time.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Single woman with 2 daughters. And Latina. They want to do a Latino version of it, which I think is a great idea.
That's interesting. When do you think we can see that on TV?
Day after tomorrow.
No,
I'm kidding.
All right, just one last question for you. Looking back on your career, do you think to yourself, wow, those were my days?
No. The truth is, the absolute truth is, I am having this conversation with you now. And even this I get to experience. That's the way I look at it. I like getting up every morning, and whoever first said every day is the first day of the rest of your life had it right.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Wacky World of Work. I'd like to thank Norman Lear. If you have a question about the program, you can email me at editors@workforce.com, or you can tweet to me at @WorkforceJames. Until next time, like I always say, whatever works.